Welcome to part 2 of day 10 of our epic 40-day 2025 Pacific Northwest road trip. In part 2, we travel the Wheeler Peak Scenic Drive before doing an awe-inspiring hike on the Bristlecone Pine-Alpine Lakes Loop trail that ended in misadventure. From the Lehman Caves Visitor Center, we proceeded to the Wheeler Peak Scenic Drive, which provides access to multiple trails and offers fantastic views of the valley below and the mountains above. It twists and turns up to 10,000 feet with aspens and pine trees along the way.
The astronomy or the whatchamacallit, the star one.
Oh, cool.
I forget if she said it starts at 7:30 and to be there for 7.
Well, there was two different
things.
There's two different talks, and I think one follows the other, but the astronomy one's later. And we're now going up the Wheeler Scenic Drive. Elevation 7,000 feet.
Caves.
Yeah.
They had to pee or whatever. That means the next person had to crawl through it.
Yeah.
And tight spaces would have stunk. But you can't really ask a ranger that kind of question. People look at you like, what's wrong with you? And that one person, I couldn't tell if he...
After traveling 5.4 miles, our first stop was at the Osceola Ditch Trailhead. The trail follows a water ditch built by gold miners in the late 1880s and offers view of the surrounding mountains and forest. Remnants of the original wooden flume can still be seen along the trail. We did not hike the trail. This is part of the Osceola Ditch Trail. At the top it said 1/3 mile, but it's actually a 5.2 mile one-way. So I don't think we're going to take this one because we're really interested in the Bristlecone Pine Trail, which is going to be about 2 miles longer than it normally is because they're doing some road construction, so you can't go all the way up to the trailhead. We next stopped at a pull-off about a mile up the road. Here I'm going up the Wheeler Mountain Road to get to the parking space, but this is at 8,500 feet elevation. There you can see down into the valley below. And there's the road we're going up. From this viewpoint, we can see the Snake Valley, a large valley that straddles the Nevada-Utah border and serves as the primary eastern gateway to Great Basin National Park. This region is known for its diverse landscapes, from desert lowlands to high mountain peaks. This shrub is a black sagebrush, Artemisia nova, a small aromatic shrub with upright stems branching from a woody base. It is native to the western United States and grows in arid and semi-arid regions, thriving in shallow, rocky, and well-drained soils. Our next stop was the Mather Overlook, a viewpoint which offers stunning views of the Wheeler Cirque and surrounding valley. The cirque is a bowl-shaped depression carved by glaciers at the head of a glacial valley, often holding a lake called a tarn.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing the big circle.
Nice.
On our way
I
back.
just retired, so
Got about a month
we're playing.
and a half.
Yeah, we're giving our...
So this is some more of the overlook. I don't know which is Wheeler Mountain. I think that's Wheeler Mountain up there. This is a bronze tactile relief map of the Wheeler Peak Cirque. This model allows visitors to visually and tactilely understand the glacial forces that shape the landscape, especially the Cirque and the remnant glacier at the base of Wheeler Peak, which is the tallest independent mountain in Nevada. This interpretive sign reads, "An icy landscape. For much of the last 2 million years, if you were standing here at Mather Overlook, you would have been looking out at a river of ice, a glacier. Glaciers expanded and shrank many times in the Snake Range during the cooler and wetter time. The glacier filled most of the valley and at its maximum extended downstream almost to the current-day Upper Lehman Creek campground. The glacier transported large amounts of rock, depositing it as lateral moraines along the sides and terminal moraines at the end of the glacier. The glacier also carved out deep rounded bowls called cirques. Stella and Teresa Lake are found in glacial cirques. At about 9 miles up the Wheeler Peak Scenic Drive is Wheeler Peak Overlook. It provides accessible views of the highest peaks in the park, including Wheeler Peak at 13,063 feet and Doso Doyabi at 12,772 feet. This is the Wheeler Overlook. And we're at about 10,000 feet. And I believe that right over there is the glacier. It's the only glacier in Nevada, and it's one of the lowest latitude glaciers in the United States. After traveling an additional 4.6 miles, we reached a road closure at the Wheeler Peak Summit trailhead. Well, we're going to try and see if we can make it to Bristlecone Pine Grove. Unfortunately, we have to go through the Wheeler Peak Summit Trail for about a mile. We were advised by the park ranger to take the following hike to the Bristlecone Pine Grove. It added about 2 miles to the hike. We started at the Wheeler Peak Summit trailhead. After about a mile, we continued on the Alpine Lakes Loop, passing first Lake Stella, then Lake Teresa. We then proceeded onto the Bristlecone Pine Trail. Mary stopped about 7/10 of a mile from the end, and I proceeded onto the interpretive trail. On the way down, Mary's hiking pole collapsed. She fell on her left arm, injuring it about a mile before finishing the hike. We then made our way back to the car.
Very doable.
Yep. Here we are, starting up the Wheeler Peak Trail. Hopefully we can last. So far the trail hasn't been that bad. We'll see how we do once we come to where it breaks off. I think we've reached about as high as we're going to get on this part of the trail.
Uh-huh.
So we're soon going to be going down for a bit. By lightning, and I believe that's Wheeler Peak there. I can't imagine anyone wanting to climb up there.
That is right there.
I don't know.
I mean, it looks like it could be an electrical box.
Something. Something they need for along the trail. The sign probably says what it is. It's a public water system.
Okay.
It's an interesting grove of trees here. This is a grove of aspen trees known for their distinctive curved trunks, often referred to as dancing aspens. The unique shape is typically a result of environmental factors like avalanches or soil creep, and the trees were young saplings, causing them to bend with the force of the snow. At this juncture, the summit trail met up with the Alpine Lakes Loop. So we finally got the first mile done, and we're now going to do part of what's called the Lake Trail, which will get us to the Bristlecone Trail, we're hoping. We made a stop at Stella Lake, a high-altitude glacial tarn in the Snake Range. It's at an elevation of approximately 10,400 feet.
Hi.
Hello.
So this is Stella Lake.
All right. Okay.
From Stella Lake, you get a clear view of Wheeler Peak at 13,063 feet and Dozo Doyabi at 12,772 feet.
Was that oxygen she had?
I think it was. Maybe that's something you can do, is a little bit of a nice reprieve walking downwards. As long as I don't twist my ankle. We next stopped at Teresa Lake, another high-altitude glacial tarn. It is one of the most popular subalpine destinations in the park due to its crystal clear, often turquoise-colored waters. This lake is at an elevation of 10,230 feet. This is called Teresa Lake. The lake is primarily fed by snowmelt and underground springs. After about 3 miles of hiking, we finally reached the Bristlecone Pine Trail. At least we're finally on the Bristlecone Trail. After probably about 3 miles of walking to get to it. So, but it's less than a mile to the grove, so gotta finish it. Hopefully only about a half a mile to go. This is a classic talus slope, which is an accumulation of angular, unsorted boulders and rocks at the base of a mountain cliff or hillside, formed by rock falls and weathering. At this point, Mary decided to stop the hike as the altitude was starting to affect her. I decided to continue on to the grove, which was about a half mile further. So here are the bristlecones. It's definitely the altitude's getting to me. Luckily, I'm just about the end of the trail. Mary had to stop about half mile ago. Bristlecone pines are famous for being among the oldest living individual, non-clonal organisms on Earth. Some specimens verified at 4,800 to 5,000 years old. These slow-growing, highly resilient conifers thrive in the harsh, high-altitude environments of the western United States. Their trunks are often gnarled, twisted, and weather-beaten. As they age, they may adopt a strip-bark morphology, where only a narrow strip of living tissue connects the roots to a few live branches. At this point, I finally reached the Bristlecone Pine Interpretive Loop Trail. So here they are. I don't think I'm going to do this full trail. The most famous tree at Great Basin National Park was named Prometheus. It was accidentally cut down in 1964 by a researcher. It was later dated to be approximately 4,900 years old. After resting for about 10 minutes, I was rejuvenated enough to continue on the Bristlecone Pine Interpretive Loop Trail. This trail features interpretive signs explaining the trees and their harsh environment. The sign at the start reads, "Some bristlecone pines are nearly 5,000 years old, the oldest living things in the world. They are found on extremely rugged sites in many of the high mountains of the Southwest. Here in Great Basin National Park, their beauty and scientific value are particularly evident. The great age attained by these trees is due to their unusual ability to adapt to their environment. They often live in isolation, where trees of other species cannot survive. The growth of most bristlecone pine is uniquely slow. The wood is fine-grained and resinous, highly resistant to decay. Instead of rotting, these trees are eroded and polished by the elements. After death, they may remain standing for thousands of years." The first interpretive sign on the loop is entitled "Science and the Bristlecone." It wasn't until 1958 that the Great Basin bristlecone pine was called the world's oldest known living thing, and it wasn't recognized as a new species, Pinus longeva, until the 1970s. The oldest bristlecones found in Great Basin National Park and in the White Mountains of California are 3,000 to 5,000 years old. The cross-section of a bristlecone pine shows annual growth rings. Each year, a tree's annual growth is distinct from the next. In warm, wet years, the rings are wide, while in cold, dry years, they are narrow. Bristlecone pines are especially sensitive to variations in precipitation, and their great age, as well as their hard, slow-growing wood, provides a long record of past climate. Cross-dating is a technique of comparing and matching patterns of tree ring data from various tree cores. In the most basic principle of dendrochronology, the scientific method of dating tree rings by counting the annual growth rings. Unlike radiocarbon dating, dendrochronology provides an exact date rather than a range. By drilling into the center of a tree with a special hollow bit, a researcher is able to extract a thin core of wood that shows a ring for each year of the tree's life. When the annual growth rings of a living tree are compared to those of a dead tree, those lifespans overlap. The dead tree can be accurately dated. This tree grew on a site where nutrients were scarce. Its growth was slow and difficult, and it struggled desperately for 1,500 years. The annual rings are narrow, the wood is compact and resistant to decay. Thus, its ability to stand for centuries after death is directly related to the adversity of life. This tree was born in 100 BCE and died in 1400 CE. The second interpretive sign on the loop is titled, Built to Survive. Part of the reasons for the longevity of bristlecone pines is that they live in the right place. In this harsh environment on the edge of the timberline, the bristlecones seem barely able to survive, but their neighbors fare even worse. Most other trees cannot cope with the high altitude, cold dry winds, and rocky low nutrient soils. The dense wood of the bristlecone has a high resin content, which helps it to resist decay. This makes the bristlecone not only one of the oldest living trees, but also one of the oldest dead trees. Their gnarled trunks decaying slowly over the centuries. The factor that contributes most to the death of the bristlecones is loss of the soil itself. The steep rocky hillsides are very susceptible to erosion, exposing a bristlecone's root to the dry mountain air. The exposed roots dry out and the remaining roots are unable to support the tree. It eventually falls and dies. A proactive strategy. Great Basin National Park contains over 10,000 acres of Great Basin bristlecone pine and limber pine forest. The park is part of a proactive group working to safeguard the bristlecones. Bristlecone seeds are collected and grown in a research laboratory to see which are resistant to white pine blister rust, a non-native fungal disease. Those that are resistant can be used to help jumpstart future forests that might otherwise be devastated by this pathogen. This 3,000-year-old remnant has been dead for 250 years. It has two buttresses. The one on the left died about 1100 CE, while the other continued growing for 6 more centuries. The great reluctance to die is common among bristlecone pines. They may cling to life for centuries after reaching old age. This one was born in 1300 BCE and died in 1700 CE. The third interpretive sign on the loop is entitled The Life of a Bristlecone. What do you see when you think of a bristlecone pine? Most of us see gnarled branches growing from a twisted trunk, ravaged by centuries of wind and rain. You'll see many trees that look like this one, but this is only one stage late in the very long life of a bristlecone pine. The 4 stages of bristlecone life are 1. Seedlings. After the seed germinates, it sprouts a single root into the ground. The stem grows only a few inches over the next several years. 2. A sapling grows up straight. It's thin and flexible enough not to be damaged by wind and snow. Continues to grow, adding limbs, fattening its trunk, and thickening its bark. 3. After a few hundred years, it reaches maturity. Branches are large with dense pine needles, and seed and pollen cones grow. Gravity pulls the branches down and strong winds distort the tree until it assumes its iconic shape. 4. Old age. Branches and roots die and bark becomes damaged. Bark only grows from live roots up to the live branches. The narrow strips of bark that sustain the tree are called strip barking. A core was removed from this tree at 4 feet above the ground. The innermost growth ring has been dated at 1126 BCE. Therefore, the tree was about 4 feet tall in that year. It may have taken as long as 200 years to reach that height. Therefore, the tree is between 3,200 and 3,300 years old. The fourth interpretive sign on the loop is titled A Long Life in This Special Place. While science can tell us important stories about the bristlecones, there are other lessons to learn as well. Some of them are almost 5,000 years old. Human history is short compared to the lives of these trees. These solitary trees adapted to survive on the barren, windy, but beautiful mountain before humans built Stonehenge or the pyramids of the Aztecs. They have lived through thousands of seasons of scorching summer sun and freezing winter snow, along with wind, forest fires, drought, and more. In some ways, this tree had an easier life than many of its neighbors. It grew relatively fast due to the favorable site conditions. But this also made the tree more susceptible to decay because of its softer wood. Sinter rot eliminates the possibility of precisely dating the birth of this tree. A careful study of solid wood and existing growth rings makes it possible to estimate an age of 2,100 years. The sign at this part of the loop describes a tool called an increment borer. It's used by scientists to obtain a core sample from a limb or trunk of a tree. The core is a cross-section of the portion of the tree's annual growth rings. Use of the increment borer makes it unnecessary to cut down a tree in order to measure and count its rings. The borer does not endanger the life of a tree. Its hole becomes sealed with pitch within a few hours. The final sign on the interpretive trail is entitled Threats to the Bristlecone. Bristlecone pines are extremely long-lived but are not immortal. The long-term survival of bristlecones can be determined by a complex interaction of factors. These factors include climate change and forest fires. This tree is 3,200 years old and still living. It was necessary to take 5 cores from different sides of the tree to obtain a complete sequence of its growth rings. This tree was born in 1230 BCE. At this point of the hike, I didn't think I could continue an ascent. What I didn't realize at the time was that if I had gone just a few more yards, I would have started circling back, completing the loop. I ended up making the hike longer by doubling back. So down there is where I had left Mary before continuing on, and I traveled way up there. It was quite a hike, probably another half mile. Stop for a short rest. Hopefully the way back is faster than the way here. It was around this point the disaster struck. On an uneven section of the trail, one of Mary's hiking poles collapsed as she descended, and she fell with full force onto her left arm. We were still over a mile from the car. We arrived at the trailhead parking lot to discover that the construction was painting lines for the car parking spaces. As we made our way to the road, I took pictures of the signs at the lot to see what we may have missed at a later time. At this point, Mary's arm was in pain. The visitor centers had closed, and we made our way back to our hotel for the night. This sign described the Bristlecone Pine Trail. This sign described the Alpine Lakes Loop that we had just taken. This is my souvenir pin from Great Basin National Park. I have now added it to my faux ranger hat. Mary and I thank you for watching part 2 of day 10 of our 2025 Pacific Northwest road trip. Great Basin is an underrated national park that everyone should try to visit. We hope you'll join us for day 11 as we travel in the early morning to Ely, Nevada, to the emergency room to have Mary's arm looked at. We then make an early exit from Great Basin and travel the loneliest road in America, U.S. Highway 50 crossing northern Nevada to Reno. After a brief visit to an orthopedic surgeon, we spend the night in Carson City, Nevada.